Great.
Hi, Dr. Rob. It's great to see you.
Hey, Debbie, how you doing?
I'm good, and we already have questions, so let's get rocking and rolling.
Ready for questions.
Okay, how do you trust an addict in recovery, especially one who has been known to, in quotes, fake recovery?
Well, um, someone asked me today, interesting, and Tammy, the question, but how do you begin to trust someone who's betrayed you? And it's actually an equation. I think it is consistent, reliable behavior over time. Meaning, when I don't trust anything anybody says if they're in early recovery, especially if they lied to me in the past, but I do trust what they do. And I will also say to you spouses, I also trust my gut. When I feel like the person I'm involved with is being more open, is being more available, is, trying to make a connection, is not so worried about what I think and feel, but working to be more open, that tells me a lot. So I tell spouses, part of the challenge for you guys is when you've been betrayed, you might say to yourself, like, well, maybe my gut isn't maybe I don't have a good finder, maybe I don't see things. And I would just say to you, that sex addicts and people who are addicted are very good liars, and we also know you very well. So if anyone's going to lie to you, well, we're going to do it. So don't blame yourself for that, but do trust what you feel now, because watching us, seeing us, and engaging with us is going to be your best guide for how to go forward. And I do trust that now that you know what's going on, that your feelings are a good guide. Tammy, you were nodding.
Yeah, I would no. Well, I was actually going to say, well, if you're a betrayed partner, how do you even begin to trust your gut? So thank you for elaborating on that. But I also think, for partners, it's really important to have support in a safe space where you can go, this is what I see and do, where somebody can either say, well, that seems different than you were sharing a month ago, or gosh, that's the exact same thing that, so you get kind of a reflection back of, where you're at, and you can kind of see if there are some markers. What do you think?
I think that partners often feel like, well, what do I need to go to therapy or counseling or get any support for? This is the person who did it to me. They're the one who needs help. And you're right, they did and they do. But you also need help, having sort of suffered through a lie and lived with what that means, which is being told that black is white and red is yellow, and lied to, and being told what you feel isn't true. um, I think part of the healing for his partner is coming back into a sense of trusting what's going on inside of them. Yeah.
Okay, so the next one. I'm a male, and my female partner and I have been together for 20 years. In December, I disclosed that I had been acting out basically the entirety of our relationship, and prior to it, going back to my early teenage years, and have been in recovery since. I was obsessed with porn, went to strip clubs, and objectified and sexualized women in non-sexual circumstances. I also sought sexual attention from women and for confirmation of their sexual interest in me. And that I'm trying to see if I
I
can.
know it's hard when those little lines.
Oh yeah, it switched. Okay. Okay. So I had to scroll. So I have been aroused by and acted out by women of varying body types, though most of the time they have been resembled thin stereotypes of porn actresses. Relatively recently, in the last year and a half before entering recovery, I explicitly thought a few times that I did not want lap dances from strippers who had a body type similar to my partner's, because it would feel familiar, and instead wanted to feel women who were thin. I also believe that I've been attracted to my partner throughout our relationship. However, rather than take the emotional risks involved in having an intimate and honest sexual relationship with her, I told myself that she did not want me, and that being sexual with her was not an option, though we still had sex occasionally, and further isolated my own sexuality. This isolation was compounded each time I acted out. This is one of those
Your
where,
question.
okay, finally, I think.
But we don't blame you for your long. It's
Yeah,
okay.
like, yeah, I'm just trying to find the question. Okay, is it possible to reconcile for my partner and me the contradictory facts that I feel wanted to be with my partner and found her physically attractive, but I deliberately sought out women to act out with who were physically different because they were thin? She believes that in my acting out, I was looking to be with women who I thought were more attractive than her. That's the question. Okay, got it?
I think that there's a very simple question in here, which is, my wife is doubting whether she was ever really attractive to me or whether I was really attracted to her. Because when I was acting out, I sought people who were different than her. Is that the question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you
And,
for
and I don't
consolidating.
think, to be honest with you, and then maybe this is for you spouses too, this is a question that where spouses get caught up because in some way you think that you're a part of this. You could be red or yellow or green or 300 pounds or 12 pounds. And if I didn't like what you were doing, I could go to the mall. Well, if I could, I would go shopping, or I could start golf. Or the only solution to my not being happy with your weight or our relationship is not going and cheating. So, I mean, I think that just that one piece is important to just to start with. And then second of all, every addict, look, I don't know about, I'm sure when Tammy was out there in her own way, when you start with beer, that's fun, but then you want to have something, oh, and then they've got something with more alcohol content, and I want to try that, and I want to try this, and and you can put alcohol and pot together, how fun is that? And so I'm sure that like any addict, he pursued things that were new to him or different or he didn't have access to in his day-to-day life. But I don't think, again, that that is any way a reflection or should be a reflection on how your spouse feels about him or herself. You didn't do this. You didn't break their heart and ruin their life because their body wasn't right for you. You did it because you're broken and you're split into pieces, and that's how you handle your challenges.
So, so,
Yes.
well, they're like, is it possible to reconcile for my partner and me in these contradictory facts? So, can you answer that more
I think I
specifically?
just did, which
Okay,
is
all right.
it doesn't have anything to do with her.
Okay,
Like it's not a contradiction when I'm out there as an addict because I'm broken and I'm looking for anybody to validate me. If my spouse is saying, well, wait a minute, you're looking for someone different than me, but that's not, it's her that's not the issue. So there is no
okay.
conflict.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. Next one. I'm 65 years old. I have been into pornography for 50 years. Can I change my sexual arousal template of needing fantasies to get aroused and not wanting intercourse due to the years of porn and masturbation? So
So
thoughts on that?
I want to type something in the chat for you. I don't know if they can read what I write, but I'm going to write
If you
something
write
really
it to
quick.
all panelists and all attendees, then everybody sees it.
So what I wrote was, if you see that,
I
I wrote
will,
to all panelists.
yes, I will share with everyone. It's all good.
So what I wrote up is a simple statement. So let's just talk about sex, period, for a second. Um, Men in particular, what turns us on is visual imagery and novelty. Those are the two things we like. Guess what? We really like porn because it's visual and it's ever changing. So this is something, and it's not that women don't like porn, but we have a particular attraction to it and a lot more. And men more often are out there in environments where they're watching sex, like a strip club. So we like to be in visual new arousal. However, think about this, my friend. If you've been married to someone for 20 years, you're not going to look at that woman or man and say, after 12 years, and say, oh, I'm aroused by this new visual stimulation, because that's the same person you've been with for 12 years. So healthy people in healthy relationships find ways to arousal and sexuality that aren't directly through objectification and they find it through intimacy. It really is both a physical and a psychological fact that when you are pursuing intensity and intensity-based sex with strangers, your brain is operating from a different place than if you were involved in a intimate, romantic, loving sexual act. I can tell you as a sex addict that being loving and intimate with someone that I am married to and committed to is a completely different emotional experience than having sex with a stranger. And so if you are used to getting aroused and getting excited, in other words, moving into the whole arena of sex on any level by looking at lots of images and all that intensity, then you are going to look at your partner of 30 years and say, I have no idea how to get there with you. And the answer lies in discovering physical intimacy and the physical relationship and the physicality of your coupleship. And I'm not going to go through all of the sexual techniques that we teach people how to revive or discover, but I will say to you just for now that if you're looking to turn to your wife of 25 years and say, oh, wow, look at you in that bikini, that probably isn't going to happen. And it's certainly not going to make you want to have sex. Sorry to your spouse. However, if you lie with her, you're close with her, you massage each other, you're loving with each other, you might get aroused. And you know what? You might have sex and it might be amazing, but it won't come on any level. It won't arrive from any place of, oh, look at that new exciting thing. It has to come from a different place inside of you. So, in a way, all of that has to be put down, and you have to be able to engage that woman in a very different, really understanding that you might not even get aroused the first time or two, or you might just have to just be there, and that's a good start.
Thank you. Wife wants disclosure amended to include downloading of images throughout the addict's life. How do you include that when it is sporadic and when porn addiction is not an affliction while still doing what is asked? These images would be downloaded off of Tumblr for purposes to pleasure myself to later, but often were just forgotten about and then left to be found later when Google Photos backed it all up.
Right. Thanks, Google. I know Tam, I have to say, I'm chatting with some friends from high school on WhatsApp. And this particular app, I don't know what the settings are or anything, but every picture, like people send pictures of their kids or they send
Mm-hmm.
picture of their house, or, every single picture ends up in my photos. So it just
Oh,
automatically,
wow. Okay.
I can imagine
Oh,
like,
wow.
when, all of a sudden in your photos, there are all these pictures of something, because some setting is, so I get how that could happen. So I'm sorry, what is the actual
I
question?
know, but I was just thinking if somebody's
I
downloading a bunch of
almost
images and
agree.
all of a sudden their friends are getting, oh my goodness, that's good. Well, they'll call for help. Okay, so the question was,
Right, but
well, it's about disclosure. So wife
oh,
wants
right.
disclosure amended to include downloading of images,
Okay.
but it's like this so sporadic. And how do you contain all of that
So
type of,
what I hear in this question is some defensiveness. I just do.
yes.
I mean, if you want to make things right with your spouse, what do you care if she adds porn? You looked at it. And by the way, it probably was part of your problem because you looked at it as healthy, but who knows what was healthy for you back then? So, what is this hang up about? Well, I don't want to call that a problem. Whatever makes it right with your spouse, make it right with your God, make it right. And I don't think I would hang my, what do you call it? Like, hang my argument, what do you call it, Tim, when you want to pin your,
I want to hang my hat on something,
I
but
don't
what,
think I want to hang my hat on. It's okay for me to look at porn occasionally. That just wouldn't be the thing I would want to hang my hat on in this situation. But that's just me. Tammy, what do you think?
well, and particularly because I felt the defensiveness because like I only downloaded it from Tumblr and I stored it later to pleasure myself with later. And I'm like,
And then I
that's,
forgot about it. I
yes,
never even used it. I never
yeah,
even
yeah,
enjoyed
yeah.
it.
Yeah, it felt like a lot of it,
Yeah.
dismissive of,
Yeah.
what the whole thing was. So, but okay. Next one. I'm a husband and going through sex addiction therapy. Currently have a lot of issues with my time, kids at home, work, etc., and trying to do the readings and journals prior to my group meetings. How do I help my wife understand my current challenges without making her feel like I'm avoiding treatment?
Okay. Well, just a quick answer is trying to think of what book. It might be Sex Addiction 101. It might be Out of the Doghouse, but I've written a fair amount about this in my writing in the sense of I try in every book I write for addicts, for partners to get information, and every book I write for partners for addicts to get information. And I think I'm pretty consistent in writing to spouses. And I do feel this way that, this is what I see is that it's hard for you spouses when the person who was formerly not available to your kids to help at the house, to support in the evening, because they're having an affair and seeing sex workers. Now they're not available to help out in the house or in the evenings because they're going to 12-step meetings and they're in therapy. So to you, on some level, it's got to feel like, hey, I am just in the same situation I was, and certainly doesn't even feel any better. So I think so my message to you is there has to be a balance, because what you have to understand as a spouse is that what your addicted partner is trying to do is not just eliminate problem behavior, but replace it with healthy behavior. And healthy behavior that is related to getting your needs met and being made to feel better and connections and support is why they're going to those meetings, and all that therapy is to get filled up by what they used to seek in their sexual behavior. So it is a part of their healing. However, and I'll say this to the addicts in the room, I know a couple of you who kind of like, oh my goodness, you're just going to meetings every night. And the truth is, you love going to meetings and you love the fellas. You're having a great time. And it's so much easier than being home and facing your angry spouse. And then when your spouse is angry, you say, well, I've just got to go to all those meetings. So there was also a balance where the person who's the addict has to take responsibility. It's not like, so I don't, recovery is like not, I believe, like this. Oh, well, I don't have any time to support you or us because now I've got to recover. It's, now I've got to work double time to make sure that your needs are met. And maybe on Sundays, I got to do laundry, and maybe in the evenings. In other words, the addict, I never thought calling yourself an addict was an excuse for anything. I always thought it was an acknowledgement of responsibility that I've got a lot to do. What do you think, Tom?
I agree. I say it's not an excuse, it's a reason. And I'm full tilt into recovery. However, it is about finding balance. And it may be that you listen to a podcast while you're washing the dishes. I mean, there's ways to, kind of, or doing the laundry or whatever. There are ways to navigate both. And, or you may get, I've got 10 minutes, I'm going to listen to 10 minutes of the podcast and I'll come back to it. But, you're plugging in some positive things to help, because it is challenging and it's hard. When you first get into recovery, you lack the tool. I mean, you're using addiction to escape and numb out because we don't have life tools. So now you don't, or you're just starting to get some life tools and you're thrown into a completely different reality. And, with all the tensions and stress and everything else. So it will be finding some balance, and it may be, taking your calendar. I'm always Ms. Practical. Get your calendar out, and I'm going to, because even if it's calendared, then you go, okay, I'm an early riser, so I get up in the morning and I'm exercising, I'm doing whatever, but then I know I have these times that are plugged into, my recovery work, so I can balance the rest of my work and my family and things around that. But I know that, like, I only have to hang on, in 4 hours, I'm going to do whatever. And so I think that also gives us some touchstones that we know that there's more coming. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, the next one. Is there any redemption for a sex addict whom gave off an image of being the gentleman, behind the scenes acted in total depravity, lying and cheating? When one loved the addict, and the sex addict was never full there, wanting to not be an addict, unable to let go or control the addiction, not able to leave the relationship, not able to heal.
So I think I might need you to rephrase that one, Tammy, into a little bit more, even if it's not quite accurate, something I can really dig into.
Yes. Yeah. So what I am hearing is, so I read the first part and I thought, that's every addict, it's not, our program is called Seeking Integrity because we want to help people learn to live in integrity. But addiction is about lying, cheating, and everything else.
It's about disintegration.
Thank you. Correct. So when you're talking about never being fully there, we talk often about addiction leaves us disintegrated, compartmentalized, so that we're one person to this. We can put on the facade, but then we're doing whatever we're doing and are acting out. So I think the hard part for me is not able to leave the relationship, not able to heal. And that, I think, is the part I would challenge, because I do believe that people who choose to can get help and can heal. And we can learn to not have to carry the shame. You talk about redemption. Recovery is, one word for it is redemption, but it's healing. It's giving us the opportunity. There's a whole program, the 12 steps talks about making amends. We are able to, to right our behavior and to live a different way. So to me, a lot of what I hear is that I'm not willing to really engage in recovery. And it may be you feel so full of shame or whatever that you are, that you feel burdened by that. So you don't, it's a little bit the drama, like you talk about, Rob, where it's like, oh, I don't deserve to, to heal and have good things happen to me. But I
want to say something about that.
Yeah, please do.
Because I was a private practice therapist for, 20 years, and I saw the person who walked in the door. And I have to say that, people who come in with addiction have similar issues, not the same, but so I'm used to a particular set of problems coming in. And it's very typical for somebody to come in and say, I don't know how committed I am to this. I don't think it's going to work. And what they're really saying is, and I really have found this, I have hoped and tried in my life to change my behavior before, and I have failed. And I don't want to hope again because I don't want to fail again. And so I've seen a lot of hopeless people walk in my office say, I don't think this is going to work. You're my last shot, or maybe it'll never work. And it isn't that it doesn't work. It's that you don't believe in yourself anymore, and you don't believe that you can make changes, but you can. It just requires the right kind of help. And Tammy's right, by the way. The fact that we run a treatment center is really useful. I've been running treatment centers for 20 some odd years, and the experience on a regular basis of interacting with you guys in treatment and understanding how things change and both your relationships and what's going on in the real world. I mean, I know this will surprise some of you, but there weren't hookup apps when I started treating sex addiction. Oh, you know what, Tammy? There wasn't even an internet. People had
Correct.
magazines and videos and stuff like that. That's how long I've been treating this disorder.
And phones
Yeah,
were still tied to a wall by a cord.
that's what a phone was.
Yes.
But the obsession, the sense of hopelessness and unwillingness to try because why bother? That's always been there.
So the next question, thank you both for your service. I really enjoy listening to Dr. Weiss podcasts and the Q&A sessions on In the Rooms. We'll talk more about that. They have been helpful. I will be clean and sober for 6 years in May. Awesome. I have overcome meth addiction and finally treated my ADHD when I was 29. For a long time, it was a struggle. I want to talk a little bit about In the Room. So Dr. Rob has graciously donated an hour of his week on Friday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific time to www.intherooms.com. And so he's got, big groups there, but this weekend, on Saturday, there will be a special event called the Super Saturday Recovery Summit, and Dr. Rob will be kicking that off. So it will begin at 1 p.m. Eastern time, which is 10 a.m. Pacific time, but go to intherooms.com for more information, or reach out to us on sexandrelationshiphealing.com as well. So Sophia Caudle and Mark Anthony Lord will also have a session. So we're looking forward to doing these once a month on that platform, but it will be a new experience for In the Rooms. But again, Dr. Rob has been gracious in his giving on that platform.
So let me just, if you don't mind, In the Rooms
Please.
is an online website that has created a space for about 175 12-step meetings a week, and so they serve as a funnel for people to find 12-step meetings all over the world that are online, and they provide the server, and all of the 12-step groups get the money from whatever people donate in those meetings. It all goes directly to the meetings, but they also have a sort of outside arena that they call the clubhouse, and that's where they talk about books and poetry and music, and there are therapists who volunteer. It's a clubhouse, and I've been volunteering for about 3 years, actually, Tammy. I think
I
more than
thought it
3
was
years.
4.
Before, probably in the fall, but every Friday at 6 o'clock, very much like this, only you're not there, unfortunately, so it's just me and the folks. But and yes, I had, oh my God, Tammy, I had 220 people last week asking questions about sex, love, and addiction. So yeah, it's become a very popular spot, and I'm really excited about just being able to give a lecture. Like I'm always answering questions, and I'm glad to do that, but actually talking about, giving you like understanding of the psychological issues behind the addiction, I'm looking forward to doing that. So yeah, In the Rooms is, by the way, free. Everything we try to point you to is, and except our own treatment, which will cost you some money, and my books, which will cost you about $15. But anyway, I'm sitting here scratching myself. Your turn, Tammy.
Oh, well, this person adds, it was a couple down. So I
Right,
recently got go ahead. I recently got a sponsor in SAA and will be done typing out my first step today, and will share it in group soon. I have stopped escort behavior. My goal is to significantly decrease the porn viewing and minimize my time on dating apps. I feel really good after doing step 1 and sharing it with my sponsor yesterday.
Is there a question there?
No, I think it was just sharing. So, okay. So the next one,
Okay.
this is from a couple. We are just shy of 2 years from discovery and full disclosure. My husband quit immediately after I found out and has been in recovery since. He is remorseful, but his remorse doesn't feel enough, in quotes, for me. He rarely cries, rarely brings it up, sometimes shuts down when triggers arise. He has cheated and lied since day 1 of our relationship, and we started dating when I was only 18 and I'm 31. I want to stay married. I want to stay married, exclamation point. But his betrayal has caused so much pain and damage. How do I accept his remorse as true enough, though it doesn't look like what I feel it should?
Well, again, I to everyone of your spouses, I suggest you trust your gut. And so if something doesn't feel right, it isn't. Now, that doesn't mean that this man is out there acting out again, but it does probably mean that he doesn't really understand how what he did affected you or the relationship. And so he's acting with his understanding of it, not really getting what it means to you. That's my hope. So I did write a great book about this, and I'm not trying to sell books because I only make 12 cents a book, but I wrote this one called Out of the Doghouse, a relationship saving guide for men caught cheating. And I wrote Out of the Doghouse because I have never, ever, ever, in 24 years of treating men with intimacy and sexual disorders, I have never met a man yet, none, zero, who really understood how to heal the wound of betrayal in a woman that he had harmed in that way. And because I've worked with so many women who experience betrayal, I really kind of know what you gals are looking for and what you hope we would get to. So I would suggest I would read the book, because you will in there see what at least my expectations would be, our general therapy expectations of someone who really is remorseful, or someone who really has worked on it, or really, and you might begin to see the pieces that are missing. And then you might either hand it to your husband, or depending on how you feel, throw it at him and say, you know, I think you should read this because you don't have a clue what I'm going through. I think it also might really validate for you how you're feeling, in the sense that what you're getting isn't enough or doesn't feel sincere enough. But I would say this, men are a bit clueless sometimes. We mean well, but we don't really understand. I wrote Doghouse because I do believe that the man who, not the sex addict, but the man who just cheats on you without thinking, and then wants to take you on vacation when you found out, or give you a nice, you know, flowers and says, forgive me, that he doesn't get it. And sex addicts certainly don't get it. So anyway, that's my answer to that one.
Could you please explain the difference between sex and love addiction compared to SAA?
Okay, well, I don't, you know, I can't speak for what other people might say about these issues. I can only tell you what my interpretation would be, both as a recovering person and as a therapist. Addiction in the world that we work in has to do with objectifying people. It means I use people, let's say sexually, to meet some need that I have inside of me, to feel important, to feel special, whatever. And I will use you or you or you. It doesn't really matter, because any one of you, when I have sex with you, will make me feel good about me. So any of you object people, I'm treating people as objects. You are a butt, you're a pair of boobs, your arms, you're that pretty face that wants me, and that makes me feel good about myself. That's what sex addiction is. It's objectifying people and using those people and the fantasies around them to feel better about yourself in a very simple way. But love addiction is not that dissimilar. In fact, I would call it, and Tammy, you will laugh at this, I think love addiction is graduate school for sex addicts. And what I mean by that is love addicts are much more invested in objectifying how they end up, they objectify people not in terms of how they make them feel right in that moment, but in general. I'm not making any sense. Let me try again. Love addicts turns people into objects so that they can feel adored and loved. So I'm going to meet you, and in the beginning of our relationship, it feels wonderful and everything, and I don't really see you for who you are. In fact, I'm not even that interested in who you are, but I love how much you love me, and I love how loved I feel when I'm with you. Oh, and then when we start to get to know each other in about a year, oh, you're kind of boring, and I'm not so interested. I need to find someone else. Love addicts are in love with love, in love with the feeling and the excitement and the Christmas lights when you're merged with someone, but you don't really know them that well. And love addicts will tend to be terrified of the part when you actually start showing up and seeing who that person is, because that's when they can really hurt you. So if sex addiction is the objectification of people's bodies, because when that body desires me, I feel good about myself or different, love addiction is about the objectification of how someone makes me feel emotionally, that you make me feel loved and appreciated and valued because you're there. Even though you treat me badly, it doesn't matter, because I'll just see you anyway I see you. As long as you don't leave, you know, I feel loved. And it's not about how you feel or who you are. It's more about how you leave me feeling. Tammy, do you want to add? I feel like I
No,
messed up.
that's fascinating. No, I actually, of course, I go to questions of like, oh, so how often is somebody both a sex and love addict, or is it more like I'm a love addict to get sex, or a sex addict to get love? So that's of
I mean,
course
that
where.
depends on the person because I think there are love addicts who will manipulate someone sexually to make sure they don't leave or to
Mm,
make sure they stay around or get more attention or, not thinking about what they want, but more what can I get from this person? In both cases, addiction is about using people. It's not really about seeing them as they are. And it's certainly not about adding and contributing to their lives.
that's a very useful. That's very useful. Okay. Oh, so this is about the disclosure. So not attempting to be defensive because it was never part of a routine. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to put it in there. More looking for advice on how to put that into words. I'm going to include the image downloading and disclosure, but want to do it correctly. I think it would be really helpful for you to give a better explanation about what disclosure is and isn't, like that it isn't like, well, on this date I downloaded one image, but can you talk about the process a little more, please?
Sure. So, in this field of sex addiction treatment, there is a very popular concept of therapy with couples called disclosure. And I am a fan of this in most situations. And what it really means, that's just the concept is simply this, that I'm in a relationship with you and you've been lying to me for a very long time. And I don't know what you lied about fully, and I don't know how many lies there are, and I don't know, was it 3 years ago when we were doing this you were lying, or 4 years ago? Because it felt like when we were on that vacation, spouses are left with so many questions. And our experience is that if couples are really going to come to a place where they can grow again, then there has to be an even playing field where there aren't any more secrets, where the spouse knows pretty much that everything has gone on, and they have in whatever way been able to absorb that and tolerate that and decide for themselves if they want to move forward in that situation and how. I think situations, marriages or relationships where one partner has a lot of information and the other doesn't, that's a power inequity that can end up playing back right back into addiction. And I also feel that I really deeply feel for you spouses. And I really do believe that you need to be empowered with the information about your relationship that you didn't have. You have the right to know what has this person been doing, all of that. So in this process, we do a formal disclosure. It involves a couple that is both in some kind of therapy where each one of them is getting a different kind of support. And then you're brought together for this, really, it's more like an inventory. It's not an apology. It's not a graphic description about sex. It's more like, well, for 3 years I did this, and then every other week for 4 years I did that, and these are the times I did this, and that's pretty much it. And then the spouse can ask some questions. We're not graphic. We don't talk about the size of someone's hoo-haws or who did what where, because that's not going to help anybody, even though sometimes people think it will. But we do want to give spouses the opportunity to really understand the whole picture. And it's interesting, Tammy, because I've been in disclosures where a spouse has said, "Oh, I know that he looks at porn. I know he goes to strip." But what she didn't know, or what he didn't know, or whatever, what that is, how much. It's like, oh my God, you were going 3 times. Then it becomes like, yeah, I knew you went to strip clubs, but you were going every other week for 3 years. Like, wow. So sometimes it's the quantity, or it's that. Sometimes it's empowering the spouse to know things they didn't know, but sometimes it's really giving the spouse a much fuller picture of how sick I've been, how really troubled I've been. Because, you as a spouse, you can think, oh, well, I wasn't enough. So this person went off, had an affair and saw some. But when you hear the depth and breadth of it, it's much easier for you to say, oh, I get it. You really have a problem and it has nothing to do with me, but you sure have acted it out around me. And that can be also very helpful for spouses. Now, to his question,
Mm-hmm.
I think I would put in there something like, I've looked at porn occasionally, and I'm not sure what part of the problem it's been, but I'm open to letting you know about it. I don't know what else you'd say.
Yeah,
And I
like you
wouldn't put a
kind of
picture of
said,
the porn. I would not put a picture of the porn in the
no,
disclosure. Because
no,
then your spouse will say, oh, did this person have these and you want those? And I'm not like this. And I would never put a picture in a disclosure. I would never describe people's body parts in a disclosure. That is a ripe situation for a spouse to feel so inadequate and horrible about themselves. It's not fair.
but I think that like you categorize, it's like I went to strip clubs for 3 times a week for what I think if there's a recurring frequency, that would be valuable information. If there's a financial cost, I know that there's a lot of partners that go, okay, you went to a strip club and you spent, X amount of dollars, like it costs this much, or I estimate I did that. That's valid information, but also can be part of the healing process as well. So like Dr. Rob said, it's data, and it needs to be given in a logical data format so that the partners can take it in, but there's also an accounting inventory, of what has occurred. So, okay, ready for the next one?
Sure.
How do you provide the best environment for a loved one who is in denial about their substance abuse, given all the different perspectives out there, things like letting them hit rock bottom, not managing their recovery, or enabling? How do you walk with them in love when they are in pseudo recovery, just acquiescing and not taking initiative for their own recovery, rather than being in true recovery?
Well, this is an interesting question because I think it would be like if this question were asked about drugs and alcohol, it might be different than it was asked about sexual acting out. So, would you be willing to tackle this to start, Tammy? Because I think,
Well, yeah, it was like the enabling, Dr. Rob wrote a book, one of those that he makes 12 cents on, called Codependence, Moving Beyond Codependency. But it really talks about supporting someone. And Dr. Rob has talked often about addiction. The antithesis of addiction is attachment. So it isn't, it isn't just setting them aside, tough love and all of that. Are there things you can do with substance abuse? I see in denial about their substance abuse.
yeah, I mean, so tell me what I meant. Let me just try this. So, if I were living with someone who is actively drinking, and they said they were working on their drinking, and they were, I wonder that I think I might handle that if I was married to that person differently than if they were seeing prostitutes and looking at porn, because that's so much more personal and more. So I'm just wondering, like, it's harder to ignore that someone is sleeping around when you're living with them and sleeping with them in your bed than it is that they're drinking. Like, you know what I mean?
Well,
There's a
see, and
different
I
value.
mean, I understand that it feels different.
Right.
But
It
like if
feels
somebody's, like they're living at home right now and they're drinking themselves into oblivion every night, I'd be paying attention to that, and I would
I'd
feel
still let them
hurt
in
and
my
betrayed.
I'd probably still let them in my bed, and I don't think I would feel that way if they'd seen five prostitutes this week. So I don't know. Like I'm just
I
I don't
don't
mean to
either.
hate, but
Yeah, no, I
I,
was like, I don't think I would. I would be like, yeah, you can sleep on the couch because you won't
so I
care.
guess
So yeah.
I guess the best way to say this is, that I don't think spouses should put up with anything that they're not comfortable with. I mean, if this person is putting you at risk in any way, if they're lying to you in ways that make you feel unworthy, if you feel less than in the relationship. I mean, if look, I can live with mental illness. I've lived with people who are mentally ill on and off all my life, family members and all that, and accepted them and loved them and supported them, but only when it didn't leave me feeling abused or used, only when it was my commitment to the relationship. I did write about codependence, and I do believe that partners of addicts should be celebrated for staying with us and not condemned for what's wrong with you for being with them. I think we're good people, and I'm so glad you stayed with us because you saw the goodness and you hung around there hopefully long enough for it to actually be realized. Good for you, good for us, right? Um, but I don't think that supporting a partner to the point where you yourself are diminished physically, emotionally, or spiritually is the right route. And now it may be that you live in one bedroom, your spouse lives in the other. You spend a lot of time with friends, and you get a lot of support at work, and you get a lot of support in 12-step meetings, and you have dinner with your spouse, and that's good enough until they get their poop together. Okay, that works for you, but I would be guarded with my heart. Guard your heart. That's what I would really watch out for.
And I was thinking, I think I would keep holding up the mirror and going, yeah, no, I like, oh, I'm trying. Like the whole, I'm trying. I just don't buy it. Oh, I'm trying. Well,
Well,
actions,
wait,
like actions speak louder than words. And like you talked about early
Tammy,
on in this session, on what?
now I have to do my I'm trying thing for everyone, right?
Go
So,
for it.
okay, and who taught me this? Dr. John Seeley taught me this. So I'm going to hold my pen. Everyone can see my pen. Well, it's sort of in the sky, but you kind of see I have a pen. Now, Tammy, I want you to do everything you can to try to make me drop this. I'm going to try to drop it. I'm going to try harder. Tammy, I
I'm
am
trying
trying
really hard. I'm trying really hard.
to help me drop it, but I'm
Drop
not
it, drop
dropping
it,
it.
drop it.
Now I'm going to drop the pen. So trying, it's just not a thing.
Yes.
I'm looking to see what an addict is doing. I'm interested in their actions and their behaviors, not what they have to say. Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I really feel like that. It's like, it can be the, oh, I'm trying so hard, or it's so hard, or whatever, and I read the just acquiescing and not taking initiative for their own recovery. And, until things get hard enough that there's a willingness to change. If there's enough pushback, if somebody was constantly in my face going, hey, no, not buying that, I might have to go, oh, so
And Mass,
on.
just want to talk briefly about the subject of leaving. Like, I've had it, I'm leaving. I think that's a very legitimate feeling for sure, and it's a legitimate thing to do. I just have a warning and a caveat. It's very, very important. This is like a therapy no-no. I'm being light, but I really mean this. Don't threaten to leave someone unless you're going to leave. Because the very first time you say, if you do that again, I'm leaving, and then they do that again and you don't leave, then they know they've got you. I'm not telling you to leave, but I'm saying don't threaten to leave unless that is your intention. Now, I will say, to what Tammy's point, and to the point of this text, I think sometimes it does take a spouse saying, I'm done with this. I'm done. You go live somewhere else for the bottom to happen. But I do not think that's ever a reason for a spouse to do that. If I'm a spouse, I throw you out or I'm done with you because I can't live this way anymore. Not because I think that if I do this, then you will do that. Because it might well be you kick that person out and they move on with their next affair, and there you are, alone and miserable. So um, choose your words carefully. And also, you may be, and Tammy, you've heard me say this before, ladies, with all due respect, I think you're too easy on us. I really, really do. And guys, I know you're not going to like that, but I really do. You put up with far too much, and you let us manipulate you far too easily. Once you know all of this stuff, I wouldn't put up with a whole lot more. And I certainly would have put up with being actively hurt and embarrassed and humiliated by someone I'm living with. That just would not be okay with me.
And I think it's fair to say, I love you. I really want you to get help, but you're not willing to do the basic things. So, I mean, you can't help somebody that doesn't want to get help. So
Oh, let
there's,
me say, well,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, we're going on forever, but we do have a treatment center, and it's called Seeking Integrity. And I have created probably 5 different treatment centers. This is the first one I've really done for myself with people that I love and I think are amazing. And I just want to mention it because we're marriage savers. I mean, we are, or at least we're marriage enders if that's what you need. I think there are places where a relationship gets to around recovery where the spouse is like, is this going to get better or is this the way it is? And the attitude is kind of like, well, I think I'm where I need to. Sometimes it's just good to take a time out. And I do recommend checking out treatment. We are at www.seekingintegrity.com. I guarantee you we are tens of thousands of dollars less expensive than almost any other treatment center in the country. We're not just doing this to make money. We're doing it to do excellent work and change lives. So, and by the way, I'll be involved in your treatment. Come see us sometime.
And all of that is true. I know all the treatment centers out there, and occasionally someone's not the right fit for us, but the work that is done at Seeking Integrity for the guys that come and want to make a change and are willing to do, I mean, it's, I could tell the rest of the time amazing stories, but I won't because we've got more questions. So someone writes in the chat, my wife and I are getting a divorce and she will not talk to me. I'm worried about how she will heal from betrayal. I am not able to help her with disclosure since she will not talk to me.
Okay, I don't know if there's a question in there, but let me say this first, just to say it. I would never encourage, so here's a rule about disclosure, since you're all listening. I would never encourage a couple to do disclosure, to disclose that information if they're not planning on staying together. If you're going to separate or get a divorce, as much as I as a spouse want that information, I don't think that I would encourage any of my clients to hand it over to you so you can take it to a divorce lawyer. And I'm not saying that you would, but I just don't think that that information on a piece of paper belongs with an angry partner who's leaving. So if the two of you are planning on working on the relationship, and let me try it in reverse. The sole purpose of doing any kind of disclosure is in the service of growing relationship intimacy. The reason we do disclosure is not to make the spouse feel a lot better now that they know everything. It's not so the addict can feel like, whew, now it's off my back. It's so that you can begin to become intimate by not having any secrets from each other anymore. To start this relationship fresh with no more secrets, just nakedly seeing each other, if I may say so. And so if you're not committed to your partner, if you really feel like, yeah, this probably, that we would not do disclosure. So, sir, you said your wife or ex is not wanting disclosure. We wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. Please don't chase her with a piece of paper saying, here's all the terrible things I did to you. Please stay with me. So here's a different way of looking at it. This is going to hurt. What I'm going to say to you is going to hurt. You disrespected this woman for years in your acting out. If she has chosen to leave you and doesn't want to talk to you, please respect her now. She, I'm sure, knows that anytime she wants to reach out to you, she can. Anytime, you can have a therapist contact her and say, your therapist, if you ever want to reach out to me and you don't want to talk, you can talk to I don't know, send her a note, but leave her alone. If someone has given up on you, sometimes that's what we have earned, and we have to just live with that. And as much as I respect your saying, I'm worried about her recovery, I don't really fully buy that, because if you were so worried about her, you wouldn't have been out there doing the things you were doing in the first place. You set all of this up. You made your bed, and now you're going to have to lie in it. And if she's in pain, why would she ever turn to you? You caused her the most pain. So let me say this about couples and healing, because I've been doing, as I said, treatment for a very long time. I think, Tammy, somewhere between 80 and 90% of the couples that I've worked with stay together, provided that they've already been in a relationship 5-10 years. Couples that have been together a while have more of a commitment. Sometimes they have kids, family, houses, they have reasons. And the longer you've been together, the less likely it is you're going to want to break up. By the time spouses often find out about this, you guys have already been together for 10 years or 12 years, and you're so deeply tied together that you kind of want to work it out. But I actually was talking to a spouse today who said on a different call earlier, I've only been with him a year, and I love him and I think he's great, but I'm going to be living in an attic the rest of my life. Maybe I could make another choice. And they leave, and I don't blame them because that isn't necessarily what they signed up for in the first place. By the way, another reason to do disclosure is if I'm going to be with someone and we're going to really be clear with each other about who we are and what we've done, and we're going to re-up for marriage or whatever we have together, you need to really re-up for everything about me that you never knew. And I'm going to say something that's strangely comforting to us addicts, even though you spouses don't intend it. If you stay with us and we really work on ourselves, in a year or two, it is an amazing thing I've seen for many people to look up and say, oh my God, after all the stuff I did, this person stayed with me? And they get astounded at that. And this is where codependence comes in for me. I wouldn't say you're staying with us is a sickness on your part. I would say it's your incredible loving health and ability to see the good in us that you stayed for. That's why I wrote Codependence, was to have that perspective. So, I would say I am so sorry for your loss. I hope that this is an experience you can deeply learn from, so that when you do love again, you won't hurt the person that you love so much that they can't be around you anymore. But that's what you've done here, and I'm not sure there's much you can do to fix it.
And I don't know the situation, but if there are children involved, you can be the best person you can so that you can be the best father and best co-parent you possibly can. So, that would be, we talked earlier about making amends, and part of it's living amends. And even if you never have contact with this woman again, you can still make living amends by being a person in recovery.
Tammy, I'm the godfather to one of my ex's kids.
Oh,
And I just feel like, that means that I've done a pretty good job in recovery, that we can maintain a real connection and come through that. Not everybody can, and that's okay. But when you love somebody, you don't stop loving them. You just might want to love them in a different way.
okay. So the next question: I am a woman early in recovery for SLAA issues. I have a pattern of idolizing and obsessing over women in positions of authority, such as a teacher or mentor. I have avoided dating.
Read mom.
Oh, okay. I was like, it's not in there. No, I got it. Okay. I have avoided dating for years as I am confused about my sexuality. How do I discern whether my attraction to someone is a healthy attraction or an attempt to escape the pain of neglect in childhood? Wow, you had that in the first sentence. Thank you. I told you he was good, but this is why. My fantasies have included people of all genders.
So again, I think this is one of those questions. If you could break it down a little bit, Tammy, there's a lot there.
Okay.
What are the specifics that you think I should answer?
Well, so clearly there are some issues. I'm not sure it because I'm sorry. There's concern over, am I just idolizing because of my childhood neglect? And then there's some issues about some my fantasies include people of all genders. So I'm trying to have some confusion about my sexuality. So trying to figure that out as well. So
Uh-huh.
I'd say it's, the attraction seems to be to powerful people, the mom thing that you talked about, and then some sexuality fluidity maybe, or confusion.
Sure. So thank you. I really do want to help here, and I think that um, first of all, I do want to say this. I say this a lot. There are people who say, this isn't the situation, but I just want to say it. Sometimes people write and they say, oh God, I wouldn't know how to start dating. I want to date. I want to go out. I want to get to know someone. What do you do? Where do you, I don't know if I can ever. And the truth is, you just have to start dating. And so there's something in that for me in this question, meaning that I don't know that you will be able to discern what is healthy for you and unhealthy for you unless you're actually out there going and getting to know people. For example, there are many men that I've worked with who will say, who I think have interest sexually in both men and women, but they have only loved a woman. So they'll say to me, I think I'm heterosexual because I love having sex with men and I love having sex with women, but it's only women I date and fall in love with. And the men, well, I just use them for sex. And so I must be like, maybe that's trauma or whatever. And I have to say to them, like, how come you haven't dated a guy? In other words, why would you go be intimate and incredibly intimate with someone, but not have them have coffee with them? So I think that there's a lot of questions on the table here, and separating out addiction from attraction needs to be done because they are different things. But listen, every one of us is repeating trauma when we get married. Every one of us marries our mother or our father. If someone who is a bit of authority figure incredibly turns you on and you like them and they're a good person and great, then you could be the wife in the marriage. Who cares? So I'm not sure that, I mean, we all do need to recreate what makes us feel safe in a relationship. In my marriage, I'm married to someone who is not particularly assertive. I would say that's true. And thank goodness, because I grew up with people who were in my face in ways that was so horrible that if I lived with someone who was on top of me all the time, well, what are you doing now? What are you doing now? I would lose my mind because I grew up with that. So I do think we pick people who can complement our challenges as well as enhance our lives. And I don't think that's a bad thing. What it does sound like you do need is people around you to help you decide, is this a good person for me to date or not? And then maybe a therapist to run to and say, this is how my date went, and this is how I feel about it. By the way, let's talk about what dating is. Okay, dating is going to a cheap, brightly lit coffee shop for an hour in two different cars or vehicles so that you can leave separately after. And maybe if you get along, within a few days, you might go for a walk somewhere on a second date. In other words, you don't have to worry about sexual attraction and all of that when you're getting to know people. You're not going to have sex with them right away. That's confusing. So don't worry about it. Get to know them. See who feels like a friend and who feels like a lover, and get out there with support and guidance. You'll find your way, but you won't find your way on paper. You have to get out there and date and get the support around dating to figure those things out.
So the next question, have you seen patterns of behavior between couples who are sheltering in place together where one person is recovering from sex addiction? Hanging out with one person so much has natural issues, but have you heard problems that seem specific to couples working through one party's sexual addiction while at the same time sheltering in place due to coronavirus?
Well, the only thing that I've heard, you've probably heard some of this, Tammy, is spouses who want to kill the addict because now I have to face this person who ruined my life every moment. It's not, there's that. Every moment with you is a reminder of what you did to me. Every time you go on the computer, I wonder if you're talking to him, her, or, so there's all of that. There's like no escape from the anger and the hurt. I've heard a lot of that. But that's about it. Have you heard other stuff, Tammy, going
Actually,
on?
what I get calls about is discovery. So unfortunately, a bunch of people are having discovery while they're sheltered in place. And then I can only imagine how challenging that is to feel trapped and like, so that's been my calls have been, I've discovered this during this time, and just feeling so trapped. So
Well,
um
you
but
don't
go
have to
ahead.
be. I do want to say that is, and again, I'm going to say it. You don't have to be trapped. People can come to treatment, and you can spend a couple of weeks working on yourself while we work on that person. So you don't. One of the few outlets from the virus is the treatment centers that are health, that are, what's the word, infection controlled, so that we're managing things so that people stay healthy. And I actually think that taking a couple of weeks off right now isn't such a bad thing to do.
No, it actually has worked out well. Some of them have done that, and it isn't even so much the partners working on themselves. I think it's just getting that ability to breathe and just know that they're away and somebody qualified is working on them, and you get some space and support. So
I do want to say that I've worked with more than one spouse or partner who has said, I have two kids, and they do, but it feels like I have three, meaning the addict. And sometimes you spouses are quite relieved when we go away, because it's like, okay, now I don't at least to worry about, as Tammy said, I don't only don't need to worry about this person anymore, but I also know they're not acting out. So I can begin to breathe and figure out what I have to do and take care of me. And then the process starts with the work.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, okay.
I know, you know what, Tammy, my stomach is really good. It's telling me we have time for one more
We
question and
do.
eat dinner.
So the next one, and I'm sorry, as always, we're going to run out of time. So
But you can find us on me on Friday on In the Rooms.
correct. And Dr. David is on Wednesday nights. And so let me, before we go to the last question, on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, all spelled out, there are support groups for partners. We have drop-in groups. We have other webinars. There are addict groups. There are female addict groups. There are male partner groups. We have groups. We have webinars. And then again, that event on intherooms.com on Saturday. So if you haven't already signed up to receive information and updates, please do so, because then you'll be in the know. Okay. Can you talk about the need for recovery work for a longtime addict husband who stopped having sex with many other women 7 months ago and came clean as an addict 2 months ago? What is the recovery work, and what is recovering addicts supposed to be addressing if they are already sexually sober?
Well, that's a lot of questions. So I think,
Yes,
Tammy, again, if you don't mind, can you at least ask them one at a time or break it down into,
sure.
because I'm not sure.
I think the keys to this are, what is recovery work?
Just say
Well,
that.
actually, let's start
Go
with the
ahead.
end. What is, because they're saying this person is sexually sober. So let's start with that. What is sexual sobriety? And then let's go to recovery work.
Okay, so thanks. This is really helpful. So if I think about alcohol and drug sobriety, I pretty much know what that is. It means no drinking and using, no mood altering substances, no pot, no coke, nothing. So drug addicts and alcoholics, they just don't shift their mood with substances any longer. And if I'm a gambler, I'm pretty sure I know what that recovery is. It means no stock market, no casinos, no fantasy football, no unsecured debt. And I can probably live my life and never do that again. But when it comes to naturally occurring functions like people who have struggled with eating and food addictions, or people who struggle with sexual problems, it's not so much about elimination like it is with drugs and alcohol or gambling and gaming. You can take those things out of your life and still have a very healthy life. But when we are dealing with a naturally occurring function that has run off the rails, like sex or food, it's more about, sobriety is more about having the way you're living line up with your values, your beliefs, and who you are. So, for example, if you're masturbating to porn and keeping it a secret, and that porn is leading you to sex workers and affairs, we would probably put down porn, masturbation to porn, sex workers, affairs, and all that stuff would go in a column. We would say, as long as you're not doing these things, you're sober. So that we can begin, if I am have an eating disorder, let's say I'm a huge overeater. If I walk into an Overeaters Anonymous meeting or a support group and I say, I have 6 months sober, that doesn't mean I haven't eaten for 6 months. It means that I have been following a healthy plan of sobriety that mirrors who I am today, and that doesn't leave me ashamed or having secrets or hiding or all that kind of stuff. And so we do the same in sex addiction. A sexual sobriety plan is one that is created with a sponsor, with a therapist. Spouses can see them and understand what that plan is. So everyone's in alignment that this is what I'm doing and not doing as I head toward healing. And what's the rest of the question, Tammy?
And then is, what is recovery work?
I think recovery work differs from person to person, but what it is essentially is it is a deep dive into self-examination with objectivity. It isn't I write a lot of journal articles, I write a lot of stuff out, and then I talk to myself about my problems. It is a deep dive into myself, and then I am reaching out to other people, like people in 12-step programs, like therapists, like people who can advise and support me, like clergy, to help me grow and work through my problem. So it is, number one, becoming as aware of it as I can be through a whole bunch of exercise and activities. And the other part is building relationships with healthy people who understand it, know all about it, and can be my guide and support toward the healing. Hey, Tammy, I do want to mention that, folks, if you haven't gotten tired of my voice, you can find us on Sex, Love, and Addiction, the podcast. And we have about 75 shows. We're pretty popular, have some great therapists on there talking to me about healing infidelity and putting a spice back into broken relationships. And I hope that it brings you some happiness. I loved filming it, so it was a lot of fun, or recording it.
Yes, and we've got more resources. Again, sexandrelationshiphealing.com, podcasts, webinars, drop-in groups. There's going to be a new podcast series soon, so more coming.
Tammy, something like Tammy and Rob go on the road. So we'll
it's gonna, we'll see, but but stay tuned. And for those of you that we didn't get to all your questions, there's some great ones in there, but it's time for us to go. I feel like at the end of The Sound of Music, when they were so long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.
So one more thing.
Yes.
I love lecturing and I love teaching.
Yes, you do.
This Saturday in the rooms, I'm going to teach the basics of what sex addiction is, porn, like what is this about as a psychological problem. So if you want to understand you want to hear me at my best, come on, join us on Saturday. It will cost you nothing.
I saw the slides. It's going to be great. So,
okay, thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Dr. Rob. Good night.
See you later. Stay safe.